Have you ever trusted someone so completely that even today, you struggle to accept what they were capable of? Most people believe danger comes loudly, with warnings, with violence, but sometimes danger speaks softly, through familiar voices, through apologies. Tonight's story is not about strangers. It's about family, about trust, and about a woman who walked into a restaurant believing she was meeting love and walked out because a stranger chose courage. You're listening to Broken Heart Grandma Stories. Today's story belongs to a woman who doesn't call herself brave, even though she survived something that should have ended her life. She is 55 years old, a mother, a business owner, and for 30 years. She trusted the wrong person. What would you do if the person you love the most was secretly preparing your disappearance? Would you notice the signs? Or would love blind you the way it blinds so many of us? It didn't start with fear. It started with a phone call, a familiar voice, a simple invitation to dinner, nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious. Just one decision that almost erased her future. In the next moments, you will hear her story in her own words. A story that begins with an ordinary night, and for words that stopped death in its tracks. This is Broken Heart Grandma Stories, and this is where her survival begins.
For words saved my life. Not a warning shouted, not a scream, not a dramatic rescue. Just for quiet words, whispered by a stranger who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Get a cab. Run. Now. I never learned her name. I never saw her again. But every night, when the world goes silent and my thoughts grow loud, I still see her shaking hands as she pushed folded cash into my palm. Hands trembling the way only someone terrified for another person. Trembles. My name is Patricia Donovan. I'm 55 years old, and this is the story of the night I almost never turned. 50-6. It started with a phone call on an ordinary Tuesday. I was sitting at my sister Kathy's kitchen table, cradling a mug of herbal tea I didn't even want. I'd been living with her for 4 months, for long months, since I walked away from my own home with 2 suitcases and a heart broken into pieces too small to count. The phone buzzed. Looked at the screen and felt my chest tighten. Amanda. Still technically my dog, still legally tied to me through paperwork, lawyers, and 30 years of shared history. Are you going to answer that? Kathy asked, watching me carefully. I hesitated. Amanda and I hadn't spoken in weeks, only stiff, emotionless texts about documents and deadlines. No warmth, no love, just legal language where feelings used to live. Finally, I answered. Patty, Amanda said softly. Her voice caught me off guard. It sounded familiar, gentle, almost like the woman I used to know. I need to see you. My grip tightened around the phone. Amanda, we've already discussed this. My attorney, it's not about the divorce, she interrupted. It's about us. Us. The word felt strange in my mouth now. Heavy, dangerous. There is no us anymore. I said quietly. Please, she whispered. Just one dinner, neutral place. I just want to apologize, properly. Kathy shook her head the moment she saw my expression. I should have said no. I knew I should have said no. But something in Amanda's voice reminded me of the girl who once baked cookies for me every holiday, the woman who held my hand when my father was dying, the one I had trusted with my whole heart. Fine, I said, ignoring every warning instinct I had. One dinner, nothing more. Tomorrow, 8 o'clock, she replied quickly. The Oak Room. You always loved it. She hung up before I could change my mind. Kathy slammed her mug onto the counter. They won't let you walk away quietly, Patty. You know what's at stake. I did. The house, the business, my father's trust. Everything was in my name, and Amanda's family had never been good at losing. The next evening, I dressed slowly, navy blue dress, simple and elegant, a touch of perfume, hair pinned neatly. Kathy insisted on driving me. I'll wait outside, she said. If you're not out in an hour, I'm coming in. The restaurant was dim and elegant, soft music humming in the background. Amanda was already there, standing as I approached. Patty, she smiled. You look beautiful. I didn't return the smile. Dinner started, harmless enough. Wine, small talk, old memories carefully chosen to soften me. Then her phone rang. Excuse me, she said sweetly. Work. She walked toward the back patio. That's when the waitress appeared, young, nervous, eyes darting. She leaned close and whispered something that froze my blood. Ma'am, she didn't come alone. My heart stopped, and in that moment, my life split into two paths, the one where I listened, and the one where I didn't. If I had ignored that whisper, if I had stayed seated just 5 more minutes, I wouldn't be telling you this story today. Asterisk, the waitress's words echoed inside my skull like a siren. She didn't come alone. I stared at her, convinced I'd misheard. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. What do you mean? I finally whispered. Her fingers tightened around the small notepad in her hand. She glanced toward the back patio, then toward the dining room, making sure no one was watching. There are 2 men outside, she said. They arrived before you did. The world tilted. What men? I asked, though I already felt the answer crawling up my spine. I saw her talking to them in the parking lot. The waitress continued, voice shaking. Not like strangers, like people who had plans. My pulse thundered in my ears. I could barely hear the music anymore, barely see the white tablecloth in front of me. This doesn't make sense, I murmured. Amanda wouldn't. The waitress didn't let me finish. She reached into her apron and pulled out a crumpled bill. She pressed it into my hand so quickly, it felt like a secret being passed between criminals. Please, she whispered urgently, say you're going to the restroom. Go out the back door. Get a cab. Run. My fingers closed around the money instinctively. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely audible, her eyes filled with tears. Because, she said, swallowing hard. My husband smiled at me like that once, right before he hurt me. That was it. That was the moment fear stopped being abstract and became real. I stood up slowly, forcing my legs to move, even though they felt like glass. I'm just going to the restroom, I said loudly, careful to sound casual. No one stopped me. I walked past the restrooms, past the kitchen door, and pushed into the dark alley behind the restaurant. The night air hit my face, sharp and cold. My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone trying to call a cab. When the car finally arrived, I practically fell into the back seat. Take me to this address, I said, giving the driver Kathy Street. As we pulled away, I looked back through the rear window. Amanda had returned to the table. She stood there scanning the room, her smile fading. Her face shifted confusion, then realization, then something much darker. Fury. 2 hours later, my phone exploded with notifications. Kathy turned on the television. Violent assault at downtown restaurant, the reporter announced. 2 patrons injured. Chaos erupted during dinner service. The screen showed flashing lights. Police tape. The oak room. My knees buckled and I sank onto the couch. Kathy stared at me, pale. Patty, what happened in there? I couldn't answer. All I could hear were those 4 words again. Get a cab, run now. I didn't sleep that night. I sat wrapped in a blanket, watching the same news footage repeat on loop. Amanda called 17 times. I didn't answer once. At 3 in the morning, she left a voicemail. Her voice sounded frantic, broken. Patty, please, where are you? Are you okay? Something terrible happened. I need to know you're safe. I deleted it. When the sun finally rose, Kathy brought me tea and sat beside me. Tell me everything, she said softly. So I did the call, the dinner, the waitress, the money, the escape. When I finished, Kathy squeezed my hand. That girl saved your life, she said. But from what? I whispered. The question hung between us, heavy and terrifying. Was the attack a coincidence, or was it the reason Amanda wanted me there in the first place? Kathy didn't answer right away. Finally, she spoke in a quiet, steady voice. Patty, your husband's family is about to lose everything. The house, the business, your father's trust. Do you really think they were going to let that happen peacefully? The truth landed like a punch, and just like that, memories I had buried began clawing their way back, memories of the Amanda I thought I knew, and the moments where something felt off, even if I didn't want to admit it. That night forced me to confront a terrifying question. What if the woman I loved for 30 years wasn't the woman I thought she was at all? Before that night, before the whisper, before the alley, before the flashing police lights, Amanda was family. Not just someone who married into our lives, not just my daughter-in-law, she was my girl. I met Amanda when she was 25 years old. Back then, I was working as an administrative assistant at a modest import company, juggling spreadsheets by day and exhaustion by night. One afternoon, my son brought her to lunch. She walked in with confidence, a soft smile, and eyes that seemed to notice everything. She shook my hand and said, "You must be Patty. I've heard so much about you." I remember thinking how rare it was for someone so young to be so attentive. That same week, she invited me to lunch, just the two of us. The week after that, dinner with her parents, and the following Sunday, she showed up at my door holding a bottle of California Cabernet, my favorite. I said, surprised, just she smiled. "You mentioned it once." I remembered, that was Amanda's gift. She listened, or at least, I thought she did. I fell in love with her, that did not romantically, but with the fierce affection of a woman who believed she was gaining a daughter. When she married my son a year later, in a small chapel in Dallas, my mother cried through the entire ceremony. My father squeezed Amanda's hands and said, "Take care of our family." "I promise," Amanda replied, and for a long time, it seemed like she meant it. We built a life together. Sunday music playing softly in the yard, iced tea sweating in glass jars. Amanda would sit beside me under the old oak tree and say things like, "You make me feel safe, Patty, like everything will always be okay." And I believed her. They never had children. They tried doctors' treatments, silent disappointments, but it never happened. Amanda cried in my arms more than once, whispering, "You're enough for me. You always will be." I told her the same. When my father passed away, he left me his business, a small distribution company, nothing glamorous, but stable. Amanda encouraged my son to join me. "We'll grow this together," she said. "We're a team." And we were, or so I thought. The business expanded, contracts grew, money flowed in faster than I'd ever seen, and somewhere along the way, quietly, subtly, Amanda began to change. She came home later, traveled more, listened less. One night, I cooked her favorite meal, pot roast, mashed potatoes, candles lit like old times. She walked in at 11, glanced at the table, and said, "I already ate. I see you're being emotional again." I sat there alone, watching the candles melt. I should have paid attention then, but I didn't, because seeing would have meant accepting, and accepting would have meant breaking. So I stayed quiet. I ignored the texts she deleted too fast, the calls she took in another room, the unfamiliar perfume clinging to her coat. I convinced myself it was stress, that love would return, but love doesn't return when it leaves by choice. 4 months before the restaurant incident, I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Is there someone else?" She didn't deny it. "Patty, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder for who? The next morning, I packed my bags, 30 years together, reduced to a note on the counter that said, "I'm sorry." 5 words. That's when Amanda realized something she hadn't planned for. Everything was in my name, and suddenly, her apologies had a purpose. Looking back now, I realized the signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. There's something far more dangerous than anger. Anger is loud. Anger warns you. Anger shows its teeth. But apologies are quiet. They lower your guard. They make you remember who someone used to be. That's what Amanda was counting on. After I left the house and moved in with Kathy, the calls began slowly. One message, then another, always gentle, always careful. "I've been thinking a lot, Patty. I miss our talks. I hate how things ended." Not once did she say, "I hurt you." She said, "Things got complicated." That was the first red flag I ignored. Then came the paperwork. My attorney warned me, "Don't sign anything without me present." Amanda knew that too. That's why she didn't bring documents to the house. She brought them to dinner. Neutral ground, soft lighting, wine in crystal glasses. The oak room wasn't chosen because I loved it. It was chosen because it made me sentimental. Because sentimentality makes people careless. The night before, the waitress whispered to me Amanda had already tried to guide the conversation. "Do you remember how we used to plan trips here?" she asked, smiling. "Do you remember how your father trusted me?" Then she reached into her bag. "Not for papers yet, for memories. I just want things to be fair," she said. "We both worked so hard." Fair. That word stuck with me later, because what Amanda meant by fair wasn't justice, it was access. A few days after the assault at the restaurant, my attorney called me in urgently. "Patty," he said, opening a thick folder. "Amanda filed a counterclaim." "For what?" I asked, already exhausted. "She's demanding half of everything, and she's claiming you were only a figurehead." The room spun. "She says she built the business, that you were emotionally unstable." That was when I understood something chilling. The dinner wasn't about reconciliation. It was about positioning that she needed me to appear confused, emotional, inconsistent. I signed even one document under that impression. She could later argue I didn't understand what I was agreeing to. Worse, she could argue I wasn't mentally competent. And suddenly, the whispers, the concern, the soft voice made sense. She wasn't apologizing. She was building a narrative. A week later, Kathy and I returned to my house to retrieve documents I hadn't stepped inside since I left. The smell hit me. First, it wasn't my lavender candles or fresh linen. It was something heavier, something unfamiliar. Upstairs, in the bedroom I once shared with Amanda, the sheets were black. I never bought black sheets. On the nightstand was a gold hoop earring. Not mine. Kathy didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Then we heard footsteps. Amanda walked in, and behind her, another woman. Young, confident, wearing my perfume. Amanda stammered excuses. The other woman smiled like she had won something. That moment shattered any remaining doubt. This wasn't guilt. This was entitlement. As we packed my things, Amanda tried one last time. "Patty, we don't have to do this the hard way," she said quietly. "We can settle." I turned to her. "The hard way?" I asked. "You mean the way where I don't disappear?" Her eyes hardened, and there it was. The mask slipped. That night, I realized something terrifying. Amanda didn't just want my money. She wanted my silence. And if necessary, my absence. The truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. Not dramatically. Not with sirens or shouting. Sometimes it arrives quietly in a folder, on a desk, through the voice of someone who waited too long to speak. 2 weeks after the restaurant incident, I returned to the company. Not as a visitor. Not as someone checking in. As the owner. The receptionist froze when she saw me. "Oh, Mrs. Donovan. We weren't told you were coming in today." I smiled politely. "I don't need permission to enter my own company." That smile didn't reach my eyes. The office felt different, familiar, yet hostile-like, a place that remembered me, but didn't know whether it was allowed to welcome me back. Employees avoided my gaze. Conversations stopped when I passed. Amanda had been busy. In her office. My office. She looked up when I walked in, surprise flashing across her face before she masked it with calm. "Patty," she said smoothly, "this is unexpected." "So were the lies," I replied. She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're stressed. You should really be resting." That word again. Resting. As if I were fragile, as if I were unstable. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I just watched her. And that's when the truth began to crack open. That afternoon, Robert Tower, accountant, knocked on my door. He had worked with my father, before me, quiet, precise, loyal. He closed the door behind him. Double quotes. "Mrs. Donovan," he said, voice low, "I need to show you something." He placed a folder on my desk. Inside were bank statements. Transfers. Withdrawals. Numbers that made my stomach drop. Large sums. $50,000. $70,000 sane dollaries, moving out of company accounts into places I didn't recognize. "Where did this money go?" I asked. Robert swallowed. "That's the problem. It didn't go where it was supposed to." My hands began to shake. "How long?" I whispered. 6 months, he said. "Since you stopped coming in regularly." The room felt too small. "How much?" I asked, afraid of the answer. Robert hesitated. "Approximately $800,000. $800,000. Couldn't breathe. She wasn't just lying to me. She was stealing from me, from my father. From the company that fed 23 families. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice breaking. Tears filled Robert's eyes. "She threatened me, said she'd ruin me if I spoke. I have grandchildren, Mrs. Donovan." I was scared. I understood but because fear was Amanda's favorite currency. That same day, I took the folder straight to my attorney. He read in silence. Then, he smiled not kindly, but decisively. "This," he said, tapping the papers, "changes everything." "How?" I asked. "This isn't a divorce tactic anymore. This is criminal. Fraud, embezzlement, intent." The words felt unreal. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. My attorney met my eyes. "Patty, this isn't revenge. This is survival." That night, I sat on Kathy's couch, staring at the wall. 30 years. 30 years of trust. And she was planning my financial erasure, while smiling at me across a dinner table. But worse than the money, worse than the betrayal, was the realization that Amanda had been preparing for something bigger. Something final. Because people who plan this carefully aren't just thinking about divorce, they're thinking about removal. Thought uncovering the stolen money was the worst discovery I'd make. I was wrong. In part 6, a message from the one woman I least expected would reveal the truth about the restaurant night and why my escape wasn't an accident. Asterisk. The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m. Unknown number. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen, my thumb hovering above it. After everything that had happened, unknown numbers felt dangerous, like doors you didn't open unless you were ready for what was behind them. Finally, I read it. Mrs. Donovan, this is Victoria. I need to talk to you, please. It's important. Victoria. The name hit me like ice water. Amanda's lover. The woman I had seen standing in my bedroom, wearing my perfume, sitting on my sofa like she belonged there. Kathy looked over my shoulder. Don't respond, she said instantly. That's a trap. What if it's not? I asked. Kathy frowned. Why would she help you? I didn't have an answer, but something about the message unsettled me, not in a threatening way, but in a frightened one. The words weren't confident. They weren't manipulative. They sounded desperate. I typed back before I could overthink it. What do you want? The reply came almost immediately. To warn you, and to protect myself. That was enough. We agreed to meet the next day at a small coffee shop on the corner of Main Street. Public, bright, busy. But Kathy insisted on coming with me. I'll wait in the car, she said. If anything feels off, you leave. When I arrived, Victoria was already there. She didn't look like the woman I remembered. No makeup, hair pulled back messily, oversized sunglasses indoors. She sat across from me without smiling. I'm sorry, she said. I know you hate me. I don't hate you, I replied honestly. I don't know you. She took off her sunglasses. That's when I saw the bruise, dark, purple, blooming beneath her left eye. My stomach twisted. She did that, Victoria whispered. Last night. Why? I asked, though my heart already knew. Because I told her I wanted out, she said, voice shaking. Because I told her the restaurant night scared me. My hands went cold. What do you mean? I asked slowly. Victoria reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She slid it across the table. On the screen was a photograph, a document, a life insurance policy. My name was printed at the top, the beneficiary listed below. Amanda Carter, amount $2 million. I found it on her laptop, Victoria said, tears filling her eyes. She did it without your knowledge. The room spun. Why are you showing me this? I whispered. Victoria leaned closer, her voice barely audible. Because the night you had dinner with her wasn't meant to end with you going home. My heart stopped. She hired 2 men, Victoria continued. She told me it would look like a robbery gone wrong. Chaos, confusion, an accident. I couldn't breathe. And when you didn't die? I asked. Victoria swallowed hard. She said you ruined everything, that she'd have to find another way. Silence swallowed the table. The coffee shop noise faded. Cups clinked. People laughed. And all I could think was this. I hadn't escaped by luck. I had escaped because one terrified waitress chose courage. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember walking outside. I only remember collapsing into Kathy's arms in the parking lot, sobbing like my body had finally caught up with the truth. She tried to kill me, I whispered. Kathy's face went white. We're going to the police, she said firmly. No, I replied, wiping my tears. Not yet, Patty. We need proof, strategy. If we move too fast, she'd destroy everything. Kathy stared at me, then nodded reluctantly. Then we do this right. That night, fear followed me everywhere. Every sound felt like a threat. Every shadow felt intentional. Because now I knew the truth. Amanda didn't just want my life back. She wanted my life ended. I thought learning the truth would bring relief. Instead, it brought terror. The moment Amanda sensed control slipping, everything changed. Her messages stopped sounding apologetic. They became urgent, insistent, unpredictable. She started showing up unannounced at the office, at my attorney's building, once outside Kathy's house. The first time I saw her standing across the street, my heart nearly gave out. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't crying, she was smiling, and that terrified me more than anything else. She's watching, Kathy whispered, pulling the curtain closed, like she's waiting for something. She was. Amanda was waiting for me to make a mistake. 2 days after my meeting with Victoria, my attorney called. Patty, he said carefully. Amanda just filed an emergency motion. For what now? I asked, exhausted. She's requesting temporary control of the company and a psychological evaluation of you. The room went silent. She claims you're unstable, he continued, traumatized, paranoid, unable to manage your affairs. Of course she did. This was always the backup plan. If she couldn't erase me physically, she'd erase me legally. Can she do that? I asked. He paused. She can try. That afternoon, Amanda called me for the first time since the restaurant. Her voice was syrupy sweet. Patty, she said, I'm worried about you. I said nothing. You disappeared. You won't answer my calls. People are saying things. I could almost hear the smile. You wouldn't want anyone to think you're not well, she continued. There it was, the threat. I know about the money, I said quietly. Silence, long, heavy, telling. You're confused, she finally replied. People have been filling your head with nonsense. No, I said. You filled your own pockets. Her tone changed instantly. Cold, sharp, controlled. You have no proof, she snapped. And even if you did, no one would believe you over me. That's when I understood something crucial. Amanda wasn't scared. She thought she was untouchable. That evening, Victoria called me in tears. She knows, she sobbed. She knows I talked to you. What did she do? I asked. She locked me out of the apartment, canceled my cards. She said if I went to the police, she'd say I planned everything. My chest tightened. Victoria, I said gently, you need to get somewhere safe. Now. She hesitated. She's not done, is she? No, I replied honestly. She's not. That night, my attorney called again. Patty, he said, his voice tight. You need to hear this. Amanda had withdrawn another $200,000, and she'd booked a one-way flight, destination Mexico. She's running, Kathy whispered. No, I said slowly. She's preparing. People don't flee when they think they're winning. They flee when they know the end is coming. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. Amanda knew the walls were closing in. She knew the money trail existed. She knew witnesses were emerging. She knew I wasn't alone anymore, and that made her dangerous. Because desperate people don't think rationally. They think final. Amanda had one move left, and it wasn't legal. Asterisk. It was just after midnight when the knocking started. Not loud, not frantic. Slow. Deliberate. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. I sat upright in bed, my heart slamming against my ribs. Kathy stirred in the next room. Did you hear that? She whispered. I nodded, already reaching for my phone. The knocking came again, calm, patient, as if whoever stood outside knew I couldn't ignore it forever. Kathy grabbed a baseball bat from beside her bed. Stay behind me. We moved quietly down the hallway. The porch light was on. And standing behind the frosted glass door was a silhouette I recognized instantly. Amanda. My hands began to shake. Do not open that door, Kathy hissed. I just want to talk. Amanda called softly through the glass. Please, Patty. I didn't respond. Running away won't fix this, she continued. We're family. Family. The word made my stomach turn. You're scaring me, Kathy shouted. Leave now or I'm calling the police. Amanda laughed. Not loudly. Not hysterically. Just enough to make my skin crawl. You already did, she said. Didn't you? My breath caught. What are you talking about? I asked. Look, outside. She replied calmly. Kathy peeked through the side window. 2 police cruisers sat at the curb. My heart dropped. Amanda raised her voice slightly. My mother-in-law is having a mental breakdown, she said clearly. She believes people are trying to kill her. I'm afraid for her safety. The front doorbell rang. Official. Final. This is the police. A male voice called out. We need you to open the door, ma'am. My knees buckled. This was it. This was the move. I took a deep breath and did the one thing Amanda didn't expect. I smiled. Open the door, I whispered to Kathy. Let them in. Kathy stared at me. Patty, trust me. She unlocked the door. The officers stepped inside. Amanda turned toward them instantly, tears appearing on command. She's not well, Amanda sobbed. I'm terrified she might hurt herself. I looked directly at the officers. My name is Patricia Donovan, I said calmly, and I'd like to file a report. Amanda froze. For attempted murder, I continued, fraud, embezzlement, and harassment. One officer raised an eyebrow. That's a serious accusation, ma'am. I have evidence, I replied, and witnesses. Amanda's mask cracked. She's lying, Amanda snapped. She's delusional. Actually, Kathy said, stepping forward, she's prepared. I handed the officer my phone. The insurance policy, the bank records, the messages from Victoria. The officer's expression changed. Amanda backed away slowly. You don't understand, she whispered. This isn't how it was supposed to go. No, it wasn single quotes t. Within minutes, Amanda was escorted outside, not in handcuffs, but not in control either. As she passed me, she leaned close and hissed, "This isn't over." I met her gaze without fear for the first time. "Yes," I said quietly, "it is. I thought the nightmare ended at my front door. I was wrong." The courtroom smelled like old paper and polished wood, orderly, predictable, safe. Or so I thought. I sat beside my attorney, hands folded tightly in my lap, reminding myself to breathe. Kathy sat behind me, her presence a quiet anchor. Across the room, Amanda entered like she owned the place. Perfectly tailored suit, hair immaculate, expression. Calm. If you didn't know the story, you'd think she was the victim. She met my eyes and smiled, not warmly. Strategically, the judge began with formalities, emergency motions, temporary orders, claims of mental instability. Amanda's attorney spoke first. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "my client is deeply concerned for Mrs. Donovan's well-being. She has recently exhibited paranoid behavior, believing strangers, accusing loved ones, fabricating threats." I felt my chest tighten. This was the narrative Amanda had built carefully. He continued, "We are requesting a temporary conservatorship to protect her assets until she receives proper evaluation." Protect. Another word that meant the opposite. My attorney stood. "Next, Your Honor," he said calmly, "this case is not about mental health. It is about motive." He handed documents to the clerk. Evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and a life insurance policy taken out without consent. Amanda's smile vanished. Attorney stiffened. Judge leaned forward. "Is this accurate?" he asked, looking directly at Amanda. She didn't answer immediately. Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed through the courtroom. "This is absurd," she said. "She's confused. Anyone can fabricate screenshots that." When my attorney made the move we'd been saving, "We'd like to call a witness," he said. The doors opened. And Victoria walked in. She looked smaller than I remembered, but stronger. She took the stand and told the truth about the money, the threats, the plan at the restaurant. The courtroom went silent. Amanda's face drained of color. "That's a lie," Amanda shouted, standing up. "She's doing this for revenge." The judge banged his gavel. "Order." Victoria didn't flinch. "She told me Mrs. Donovan wouldn't make it home that night," Victoria said, her voice steady. "She said it would look like an accident." A murmur spread through the room. I closed my eyes. Hearing it out loud hurt more than I expected. Then Amanda did something no one expected. She turned toward me. "After everything I gave you," she cried, tears spilling freely now, "you're destroying me." I stood. And for the first time, I spoke. "I gave you trust," I said. "You turned it into a weapon." The judge stared at Amanda. "I'm ordering an immediate investigation," he said firmly, "and freezing all contested assets." The gavel struck. Just like that, the power shifted. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Amanda pushed past them, eyes wild. "Patty," she yelled, "you think this ends here?" I didn't answer, because this wasn't about endings anymore. It was about consequences. The judge's ruling felt like victory. After the courthouse, everything went quiet, too quiet. No calls, no messages, no surprise appearances. Amanda vanished. At first, that silence felt like relief. I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. I drank my coffee without my hands shaking. I even laughed once, an unfamiliar sound that startled me more than fear ever had. But deep down, I knew the truth. Amanda wasn't done. She was thinking. And when Amanda thought, people got hurt. 3 days after the hearing, Victoria called me in a panic. "She's gone," she said breathlessly. "Her apartment's empty. Clothes, documents, everything." She wiped her phone clean. My stomach dropped. "Did she say anything?" I asked. Victoria hesitated. "Just one thing," she said. "If I'm going down, I won't be going alone." That night, my attorney called with news that chilled me. Amanda withdrew the last frozen funds before the order processed. He said, "It wasn't much, but it was enough." "Enough for what?" I asked. There was a pause. "To hire someone," he said quietly. The next morning started like any other. Kathy went to the grocery store. I stayed home, sorting through old files, trying to reclaim pieces of a life Amanda had almost erased. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a delivery uniform holding a clipboard. Package from Mrs. Donovan. He called. Something felt wrong. I didn't open the door. I didn't order anything, I said through the wood. He smiled just a little too slowly. It requires a signature. My heart pounded. No, I replied firmly. Leave it on the porch. The smile vanished. He stepped closer to the door. That's when I saw it. The tattoo on his wrist. A black snake. The same symbol Victoria had once mentioned. The mark Amanda said meant loyalty. I stepped back and dialed 911. The man heard the keypad tones. He ran. Police caught him 3 blocks away. Inside, his bag was a knife, and my address written in Amanda's handwriting. When Kathy came home and saw the police cars, she broke down in my arms. She really tried again. She whispered. Yes, I said, my voice steady despite the fear still trembling inside me. And this time, she failed. Amanda was arrested 2 days later at a border checkpoint. Fraud. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. The charges stacked up faster than she ever imagined. When they brought her into the station, she asked for one thing, to see me. I refused. Some doors should never be opened again. I thought Amanda's arrest would finally end the nightmare, but evil doesn't disappear when it's caught. I didn't plan to see Amanda again. I told myself I was done. Done with explanations. Done with fear. Done with her shadows stretching across my life. But closure doesn't always come when you want it. Sometimes, it knocks anyway. 2 weeks after Amanda's arrest, my attorney called. Patty, he said carefully, she's requesting a meeting. No, I replied instantly. She claims she has information, he continued, something that directly affects you. Silence settled between us. What kind of information? I asked. He exhaled slowly. About your son. My heart stopped. My son had distanced himself months before everything exploded quietly, painfully. He said he needed space. I respected it, even though it broke me. What does she know? I whispered. She says, you deserve the truth, my attorney replied, and that it's better you hear it from her than from the prosecution. I closed my eyes. That was how Amanda always operated, offering truth like poison wrapped in silk. The visitation room was cold. Plastic chairs, glass wall, a phone bolted to the table. Amanda was already seated when I entered. She looked smaller, palest, stripped of power, but her eyes were still sharp, still calculating. I knew you'd come, she said into the phone, smiling faintly. I didn't come for you, I replied. Talk. She studied me for a long moment. You always were direct, she said. That's why this hurt so much. I didn't respond. She sighed. Your son knew. The words sliced through me. Knew what? I asked, my voice tight. He knew about the money, she said, about the accounts, about the insurance. My chest burned. He didn't plan anything, she added quickly. But he didn't stop me either. No, I whispered. You're lying. Amanda shook her head slowly. He was afraid, she said. Afraid of losing everything. Afraid of disappointing you. Tears blurred my vision. Why tell me this? I asked. Her smile faded. Because you won, she said quietly, and I can't take this with me. For the first time, she looked empty. I loved you, she added, in my own way. I stood up. Love doesn't look like this, I said. And I walked out. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed every conversation with my son, every silence, every excuse. The next morning, I called him. He answered on the second ring. Mom, he said softly. I know, I replied. There was a long pause. I'm sorry. He whispered. So was I. I thought facing Amanda would bring peace. Instead, it revealed a deeper wound. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. People think it's about the other person, about absolving them, about wiping the slate clean, about pretending the damage never happened. But forgiveness isn't that kind. Real. Forgiveness is heavy. It sits on your chest at night. It forces you to choose between bitterness and peace. It asks whether holding on is protecting you or poisoning you. And after everything Amanda had done, the question wasn't could I forgive, it was whether I needed to. My son came to see me a week after our phone call. He looked older, smaller, like guilt had been hollowing him out from the inside. I didn't know how to stop her. he said, tears in his eyes. She told me you'd be fine, that it was just paperwork. And when it wasn't, I asked gently. I panicked, he admitted. I thought if I spoke up, I'd lose everything. I nodded slowly. Fear makes cowards of good people. It doesn't excuse them, but it explains them. I didn't raise you to be fearless, I said. I raised you to be honest. He bowed his head. I want to make it right. He whispered. I believed him. That was the hardest part. The court proceedings moved forward quickly after that. With Victoria's testimony, the accountant's records, and the attempted attack, Amanda's case collapsed in on itself. She pled guilty to multiple charges. The sentence was long. Final. When the judge read it, I felt nothing. No joy, no relief. Just an empty quiet where rage used to live. And maybe that was forgiveness. Beginning, I returned to the company. Not to reclaim power but to restore trust. I spoke to every employee personally. I failed you, I told them, by stepping away, by trusting blindly. They didn't blame me. That forgiveness surprised me more than anything. Slowly, the building felt like mine again. One afternoon, a letter arrived, Amanda's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. Stared at the envelope for a long time before finally tearing it open. Inside, only one sentence. I never thought you'd survive me. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. I didn't need it anymore. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. For the first time in months, my body felt still, not numb. Still. And I realized something powerful. Forgiveness wasn't about Amanda, it was about reclaiming my future. I believed the worst was behind me. I was wrong. Some truths live so deep inside us that we never think to challenge them. They shape our decisions. They guide our loyalty. They tell us who we are allowed to trust. And sometimes, they are built on a lie. 3 months after Amanda was sentenced, life began to look normal again. Not happy, not perfect, just livable. The business stabilized. Employees smiled without fear. I started cooking again, real meals, not survival food eaten in silence. One afternoon, while organizing old files from my father's study, I found a thin envelope tucked behind a ledger. It wasn't labeled. The paper was yellowed with age. Inside were 2 documents. One was my father's handwriting. The other was a DNA report. My heart started racing. I sat down before my legs gave out. The letter was dated 15 years ago. Patty, if you're reading this, it means I didn't find the courage to tell you myself. Some truths are heavier than silence, but silence can become its own kind of harm. My breath caught. Your son may not be mine by blood. I loved him as my own. I always would have, but you deserved to know. The words blurred through tears. My hands trembled as I picked up the second document. The DNA test confirmed it. My son was not biologically related to my father, which meant my world tilted. Memories rushed back. My father's distance at times, his overcompensation at others, the way Amanda once said, blood matters more than love. She knew. That's why she felt entitled. That's why she believed she could erase me and keep everything. Because, in her mind, I was the weak link. I sat there for hours. Not angry, not devastated, just aware that the story I had lived by wasn't the full truth. And strangely, instead of breaking, MIT freed me, because love had carried us all these years, not blood, not legality, not ownership. Love. That evening, my son came over for dinner. I watched him laugh, watched his hands move the same way they always had. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Some truths are meant to be known. Others are meant to be understood. I thought uncovering the truth would close the final chapter of my story. There comes a moment after every storm when the sky clears just enough for you to see what's left standing. That moment isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it's quiet, and it asks a single question. Who are you going to be now? After discovering the truth about my father and my son, I stopped pretending I was the same woman I'd been before. Not broken, but changed. I spent years defining myself by responsibility, the reliable one, the strong one, the woman who held everything together while others took pieces of her life for granted. I thought survival meant endurance. I was wrong. Survival means choice. The business was thriving again. Offers came in, investors, partners, expansion opportunities. Each one promised security. Each one asked for control. I surprised everyone when I declined. I've had enough people trying to own my life, I said simply. Instead, I appointed a new management team. People who earned trust instead of demanding it. I stayed but on my terms. My son and I began rebuilding something fragile. Not the past, something new. We talked honestly, sometimes painfully. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He worked for it, and slowly, consistency replaced guilt. One afternoon, he asked me, "How did you survive all of it?" I thought about the waitress, the documents, the knock on the door, the choice not to give in to fear. I stopped abandoning myself. I said, I started volunteering at a women's shelter. I listened to stories that echoed my own women manipulated through love, controlled through fear, silenced by shame. I told them one thing: you're not crazy, you're not weak, you're waking up. And every time I said it, I believed it more. Then came the final letter from the district attorney. The case was officially closed. Amanda would not be eligible for parole for a long time. I felt no celebration. Only release. Some people leave scars. Others leave lessons. I thought my story was finally finished. I didn't recognize her at first. She was sitting alone on a bench outside the courthouse, head down, hands folded tightly in her lap, shoulders curved inward as if she were trying to disappear. I almost walked past her, then she looked up, and I realized she was me. Not literally, of course, but the woman staring back at me wore the same exhaustion, the same quiet confusion I had carried for years, the kind that comes from loving too deeply and trusting too completely. She stood when she saw me. Double quotes, Mrs. Donovan, she asked softly. I nodded. My name is Claire, she said. I was told you might be here today. I waited. My sister is going through something, she continued, voice trembling. Her husband controls everything, her money, her phone, her friends, and she keeps saying it's her fault. That sentence landed like a familiar ache. I sat down beside her. It's not, I said gently. Claire's eyes filled with tears. That's what I tell her, but she won't listen. She says, love requires sacrifice. I took a deep breath. Love requires honesty, I said. Sacrifice without consent is just control wearing a mask. She stared at me like I'd handed her oxygen. How did you know when to leave? She asked. I thought for a moment. I didn't, I admitted. I knew when staying was killing me. Silence stretched between us. Then she asked the question I hadn't asked myself in a long time. Do you ever wish you'd seen it sooner? I closed my eyes. Yes. Every day. But regret is a place you visit, not a place you live. No, I finally said, because the woman I was then did the best she could with what she knew. Claire nodded slowly, as if storing that truth for later. When she stood to leave, she hugged me tight and brief. Thank you, she whispered, for surviving. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror longer than usual. I studied my face, the lines, the softness, the strength that hadn't been there before. I forgive you, I said quietly to the woman who ignored the signs, who believed apologies, who confused endurance with love, and something inside me loosened. I thought forgiving myself was the final step. I used to believe survival was the end of the journey, that once the danger passed, the story stopped. I was wrong. Survival is only the beginning. A year after everything ended, I was invited to speak at a small community center. Nothing grand. Folding chairs, a cracked podium, a room filled with women who looked tired in a way I recognized too well. I almost declined. Who was I to speak? Then, I remembered the waitress. The stranger who risked nothing for me, and everything for herself. So I said yes. I didn't tell them every detail. I didn't need to. I told them this. I ignored my instincts because love taught me to doubt myself. And the moment I trusted my fear instead of dismissing it, my life changed. Heads nodded. Eyes filled. One woman raised her hand and asked, what if it's too late? I met her gaze. If you're breathing, I said, it's not too late. After the talk, a young girl approached me. She couldn't have been more than 20. My mom is in something like that, she whispered. She won't listen to me. I took her hands. Then you listen to her, I said. One day, she'll hear you. That's when I understood. I didn't survive to win a lawsuit, or reclaim a business, or expose a crime. I survived to become proof. Proof that intuition matters, that fear can be wisdom, that walking away is sometimes the bravest act of love. I never found the waitress. I tried, but some angels don't leave forwarding addresses. Still, every time I speak, I imagine she's somewhere listening, knowing her courage didn't vanish into silence. Today, my life is quiet, not empty. Intentional. I wake up without dread. I trust my voice. I choose peace without apology. And when people ask me how I moved on, I tell them the truth. I didn't move on. I moved forward. If you're hearing this and something inside you feels uncomfortable, listen. That's not weakness. That's awareness knocking. And this time open the door, because survival isn't luck. It's the moment you finally choose yourself. If this story stayed with you, it's because part of it is yours. And if you're still here, your story isn't over yet.
You've just heard a story of survival. But more than that, you've heard a story of awareness. This wasn't about fear. It was about listening to that quiet voice inside that tells us when something isn't right. Patricia survived not because she was lucky, but because she chose to trust herself at the moment it mattered most. If this story made you uncomfortable, that discomfort has a purpose. It's a reminder, a warning, and sometimes a second chance, because danger doesn't always look like danger, and love doesn't always mean safety. If you're listening right now and something in your life feels off, please don't ignore it. Silence protects no one. If this story touched you, follow Broken Heart Grandma Stories for more real voices, real survival, and stories that remind you you are not alone. And if someone in your life needs to hear this, share it with them. This has been Broken Heart Grandma Stories. Thank you for listening. And remember, survival begins the moment you choose yourself.